votre esprit,
your spirit,
vous donc, hein,
that's you,
vous êtes là,
you're there,
au centre du monde,
in the center of the
pour
world,
lui-même.
each one for
Vous
himself.
savez ça.
You know that.
Vous êtes le centre
You are the center,
et tout le monde est autour.
and everybody else is around you.
Vous avez remarqué ça.
You've noticed that. Yes?
Souvent, on reproche aux gens, oh, toi, tu te prends pour le centre du monde.
Often we criticize people and say for thinking that they are the center of the world. But
Pour vous-même.
you are the center of the world.
C'est bon ça, comme idée?
But do you understand that? You follow that idea?
Vous êtes le centre du monde.
You are the center of the world.
Avec cette capacité d'observer.
With this ability to observe, to look around you, what's happening inside you.
Donc, il y a en vous cette capacité.
So, thus, there is within you a capacity to observe. Now, imagine that you're sitting there in the center of the world,
Et il y a des visites qui viennent.
and there are visits that start,
Des pensées.
thoughts.
Vous rendent visite alors que vous êtes assis là au centre du monde.
They come and visit you, even though you're sitting there in the center of the world, and you observe what's happening. Visitors.
Chacune de vos façons de penser.
And each one of your ways of thinking is a visitor.
Vient,
It comes
et il passe.
and it leaves.
Parce que votre façon de penser ne dure jamais.
Because your way of
longtemps.
thinking never lasts very long,
Vous avez un
for
certain
very
nombre
long.
de façons de penser ou de ressentir.
And you have a certain number of ways of thinking or feeling.
Vous êtes assis là,
And you're sitting
au
there
centre du monde,
in the center of the
les
world,
visiteurs viennent,
and the
vous
visitors
remarquez
come,
une façon de penser que vous avez.
and you look at the kind of thoughts you are having, your way of judging, your way of criticizing, your way of feeling,
Et vous êtes assis là, au centre
and you're
du
sitting
monde.
there in the center of the
Tout
world,
ça, ça vient.
and all that's coming to you.
Vous quittez
But
pas votre
especially,
chaise, hein, vous restez assis
You
là.
don't leave your chair. You're sitting there,
Les
and
façons
you
de penser
continue
que vous
to
avez,
look at
les façons de
all the
ressentir
ways of
que vous avez.
thinking that you have,
C'est tout le
the ways of feeling that you have, that are all just passing,
souvent.
and you let them pass. They're going to come back frequently, but you look at them.
Donc, il ne s'agit pas de changer votre façon de penser, vos façons
So
de
it's not a
penser.
question of
Il
changing
s'agit
your way
de
of thinking,
reconnaître,
but it's a way. But
d'observer.
it's a question of
Vous allez
recognizing them,
observer que certaines
observing
façons
them.
de penser
and you will see that a certain number of ways of thinking, of judging, criticizing, or feeling,
sont très habituelles,
they're very usual
d'autres de temps en temps.
and frequent, and others
Vous laissez
only
passer.
infrequently.
Vous restez le centre.
And you let it all pass, and you
Accueille tous ces
remain the
visiteurs
center of the world who welcome all these passing visitors.
Vous arrivez à comprendre ça?
Are you able to understand that?
C'est comme ça que celui que vous êtes,
It's like that,
qui est
that
assis au centre du monde,
he who is you are, who is sitting in the
voit
center
tout
of the
ça
world,
arriver, passer,
he sees all
et
that
vous devenez
coming
de plus en plus
and
celui qui est
leaving,
assis au centre de son
and you become more and more the person who is sitting in the center of the world. And there's nothing to change,
Celui qui observe ça.
because you are he who observes.
Vous arrivez à comprendre ça?
Are you able to understand that?
Demain, vous pouvez passer une journée comme
Tomorrow
ça.
you can spend a day like that, or you can start a bit later.
Commencez à regarder qu'est-ce que
You
c'est
can
comme
start
façon de
looking at the kind of thoughts you have about one thing or
Votre humeur de
another,
fond, c'est ça aussi, hein.
or your underlying mood.
Penser, d'être.
It's the way of thinking or being.
Et vous
You observe
commencez
that,
à les reconnaître.
and you begin to recognize them.
Et maintenant, la clé,
And now,
c'est que vous
the key
arrêtez
is that
de
you
vous prendre
stop
pour ça.
taking yourselves for that,
Parce que vous êtes celui qui est
because
assis.
you are he who is sitting there in the center of the world.
Et toutes ces façons de penser, vous les
And all these ways
reconnaissez.
of thinking, you recognize
Et
them,
vous savez que vous n'êtes pas ça.
and you know that you're not that.
Visiteurs de passage.
These are just visitors who are passing.
Et vous devez apprendre à connaître
And you have to
toutes vos façons de
learn to
penser.
recognize all your ways of
Tiens,
thinking,
là, maintenant,
and to say to yourself, oh, that's my way of, my aggressive way of thinking, but it's not me. It's just a way of thinking which is visiting me, which is trying to get me out of my chair and to take my place. I recognize
Une
that.
façon de penser.
Another way of
J'aime
thinking,
bien les personnes
oh,
qui
I
viennent
like the person who's coming
parce qu'elles sont sympathiques.
because they're sympathetic, they're nice.
Le sourire de quelqu'un.
I like to feel the smile of someone, or the recognition of someone. Yes,
Voilà comment je fonctionne.
that's how I operate.
Comme ce que vous avez déjà observé en vous.
Just you've already observed this within you.
Vous devez revenir à l'idée.
But you must come back to the idea that you are he who is sitting there and welcomes all these visitors who are passing and who are your ways of thinking. And if you want to free yourself one day of all these visitors who are passing and ways of thinking and old things that are coming by, and really be the person who is really sitting there, you have to recognize it each time. And especially, you have to say to yourself, I'm not that. That's just passing. Even my bad moods, they're just passing. Let them go. You understand?
Rien à remplacer, juste à observer.
Nothing to replace, just observe.
Comment vous voulez connaître votre esprit si vous observez
How can you imagine understanding your spirit if you can't understand and recognize what's visiting it? Within you, your consciousness, your spirit, and a type of thought that comes, a way of thinking comes, and you look at it. Usually you don't look at it. When you're sleeping, you take yourself for it. It settles in your place, in the place of your spirit, a way of thinking. But if you observe it, you can free yourself from it. And then one day, you're yourself. But you need to recognize these ways of thinking. And each time say to yourself, it's not me. It's just a passing way of thinking, a temporary way of thinking. If not, you're going to continue until the end of your life to take yourself for these ways of thinking. You think that you are that. If you don't do that, you'll never know your spirit. You cannot know it. If you can't observe what is coming into it and which is not you, you are he who is watching, observing. That's the foundation. And then you have to decide how you're going to walk in life, how you're going to go through life. You have to go through life standing up right, looking at people, smiling, being friendly with them, and that's all. There's nothing else to do. You don't even have to think very much. You just have to take a decision. In the morning I wake up. I have the right to be in a bad mood or any kind of mood until I take my shower or until I brush my teeth. Oh, so the time takes me to brush my teeth. Afterwards it's finished. I decide who I am. I am someone who stands upright, who meets others, who smiles, who takes everything lightly, because he knows that everything passes. All the problems, everything passes. So I can take things lightly. I look at people, I smile. There's something to do, I do it. I do it quietly, gently, without violence. And I continue like that. Somebody speaks to me, I listen. I breathe in, I breathe out, I listen. Quietly. He wants me to say something. I breathe in, I breathe out, and I tell him something. And what I say is always a bit of the truth of the moment, on the condition that it is more or less nice and gentle, and then it's finished. And then I continue on my way. I go ahead quietly, upright. I breathe in, I breathe out. I have an intensive work to do. I'll do it. I'll do this intensive work. I'm going to concentrate. It's a work that's hard and difficult. I do it.
Et au bout de 50 minutes,
And after 50
maximum,
minutes, maximum,
pause. Oui,
I stop.
j'arrête tout.
I take a break.
Et
I
je
stop
me redresse,
everything.
je me détends, je
And I
respire,
stand up,
je regarde le ciel bleu.
I relax, I breathe in, I breathe out, I look at the blue sky or
Je
the
regarde le
gray
ciel, les
sky,
nuages.
or in any
Et
event,
je
I look
marche
at
un
the
peu,
sky
je
or
respire. Il y
the
a quelqu'un,
clouds.
je regarde,
I
je
walk a
souris.
bit, I breathe in, I breathe out.
Je
There's
fais
somebody
des
who comes
grimaces, un
along,
truc comme ça.
I,
Je fais quelque
I
chose,
smile at
tu
them
vois,
or I make a
qui est
face.
doux,
I do
gentil,
something that
tranquille.
is gentle, nice, peacefully.
Et au bout de 10 minutes, si
And
j'avais
then
du
after 10
travail à
minutes,
faire,
if
je
I
retourne
still
à mon
have work to
travail,
do,
je
I
le fais.
go back to my work and I do
Si
it.
je fais des réunions avec des gens,
And if I
c'est ce
have
que je fais.
meetings with people,
Je fais la même chose.
what do? It's the same
M'assois
thing.
tranquillement,
I sit down
je respire,
quietly, I breathe in, I breathe out, I relax.
quelqu'un dit
Someone
quelque chose, ou quelqu'un dit quelque chose.
reads something or says something, I listen.
J'essaie de comprendre.
I try to understand.
Et puis je dis moi-même.
And then I say myself, I say
Et on
something.
continue.
And we continue.
Et toujours avec
And
en
always
regardant les
with,
gens, et avec
always
le sourire.
looking at people and with a smile.
Rien d'autre.
Nothing else.
Pourquoi vous faites pas ça?
Why don't you do that?